Welcome to the She's So Money YouTube channel. This is actually my first official YouTube video, so I am very excited, very nervous, more excited than nervous, and I know I'm going to look back on this video and be like, whoa, but we are here, I'm doing the damn thing. So welcome to the channel. My name is Anna and I am the founder of the She's So Money company, and it's really my passion to teach ambitious women how to invest into the stock market and create financial independence. And on this channel, we're going to be covering lots of different topics, but mostly around investing, personal finance, creating financial independence, becoming wealthy. So I'm so excited that you're here. Okay, so I want to talk to you today about recessions, because at the moment there's a lot of talk about recession, and it's possible that you don't know what the hell a recession is and you're feeling a bit freaked out and you really want to know more about what it is, what causes it, and most importantly, how you can make sure that you recession-proof your finances and you not only survive but you thrive through a recession. So we're now on the 2nd of August 2022, and recent figures from the US has shown that the US economy has shrunk for the second quarter in a row. Now, officially, that is how you define a recession, when there are 2 quarters back to back where the economy shrinks. There's still some debate as to whether America is in a recession or not. Depends who you listen to and what you read, and there's some differing definitions of what a recession is. But generally, in the United States, because the economy is so huge, there's a saying that if America sneezes, the whole world says, bless you. And so in the UK, we are also looking like we're heading towards a recession. And in fact, the International Monetary Fund have said that it's going to be a global recession. So whether you're in the US, whether you're in Australia or the UK, or really anywhere in the world, it's looking like a recession is on the plate. So whether or not it happens, this episode is going to be really, really important, because you're going to understand what a recession is, what causes recessions, and most importantly, how you can make sure you thrive during a time like this. Because with a recession, on the back end of a recession, like everything else, these are temporary, and there will come a time where the recession ends and the economy starts to boom, and you want to be in the best position possible. So I want you to know there's nothing to freak out about or panic about, so don't buy into all the fear mongering, but we're just going to talk about what it is. Because even if, you know, in the UK we don't officially go into a recession, or there's not officially a recession in America or Australia, then there will be a recession in the future, and you're very likely to live through a recession. So I want to make sure that you understand what it is. Now, you might be eye rolling, like, Anna, what a recession, that's so boring. And look, I get it, I do get it, but if you want to be wealthy and you're really committed to growing your financial intelligence and your financial literacy, then understanding the basics of, you know, what a recession is and economics is really, really important, and you're going to sound really fucking smart, which is cool. Okay, so let's talk about what is a recession. So a recession is when the economy significantly slows down. So what does that mean? So basically, people start spending less, businesses start making less money, unemployment goes up, people start to lose their jobs, and just generally the economy slows down. So if you imagine somebody loses their job and then they're starting to worry about money, so they're going to spend less money. Because they're spending less money at businesses, then those businesses start to have less revenue, and then those companies might need to lay off more people, and it just becomes like a cycle. So there's something called the business cycle, where it's really just representative of the natural ebbs and flows of our economy. Sometimes our economy is growing and things are great, and sometimes our economy is shrinking and things are not so great. And it's cyclical, just like the stock market. So it goes in cycles. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. But what's important to remember is a recession is a normal part of the economy. It's actually an unavoidable part of the economy. Recessions happen, and they can last a few months. They can last years. And generally, if it's looking like a recession is coming, then the government is going to do everything that it can to avoid that becoming what's known as a depression. So you might remember from school studying the Great Depression, which was in 1929. And that really was a horrible time for a lot of people. And a depression is just an extended recession. So governments and countries really don't want that to happen. Generally, they'll do everything they can to stop that happening. So when the economy is growing, things are great. And what happens is borrowing money becomes cheaper. So interest rates are lower. So it's much easier to borrow money and get credit. It's easier to get a mortgage. It's easier to borrow money on a credit card. And so what happens is people and companies generally start to borrow more money because it's cheaper. And this allows them to grow more rapidly. But it also means that demand for things like new homes go up. And so it drives up the price of these things like property, right? So we can see at the moment what's been happening all over the world. In the UK, in America, and Australia, is house prices have gone crazy. So if you've been planning on buying your first home, in the past couple of years, you probably found that the deposit that you saved just isn't enough anymore. And house prices have been crazy bananas. It's just been insane. And also what's happened recently is interest rates have gone up. So what happens is when interest rates are low and the economy is expanding and things are great and people are loving life and they're spending money, they feel rich, they're out there living their best life, but they're borrowing money more and more amounts and heavier amounts. And then what happens is there's usually a event that occurs that then kind of has this snowball effect that then causes a recession. Now, it's really important to know that nobody really can tell, exactly what causes a specific recession. There are lots and lots of theories. Definitely not going to be doing it in this episode. I'm not an economist. Maybe we'll have someone in to interview about this, but there's lots of things that can cause recessions, or at least be a catalyst for recessions. So I'm going to cover the most popular ones in a moment, but generally when everything's going good and the economy's growing, something is going to happen that's going to cause it to kind of start to slow down and then go the other way. And when it starts to go the other way, what happens is interest rates then get put up, right? They go up. And then people can't meet their debt. So they've borrowed loads of money when times are good, and now they have to pay it back, but they have to pay it back at higher interest rates. And so they start to freak out. They start to struggle to pay that debt. They start to spend less. They start to borrow less, and it all goes down the opposite way. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that can cause a recession. So number one is a sudden economic shock. The best example of this is, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. Nobody could have predicted this. It was a huge economic shock, and it had a huge economic impact, of course, because we were all locked down. Companies were shut down, businesses were shut down. We couldn't spend our money apart from online. Obviously, in some online sectors, it was a boom. But, for brick and mortar businesses, it was a real disaster. And so this obviously had a huge impact on the economy. And at the moment, what's happening around the world in terms of a possible global recession, a lot of the blame is being put on the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns, of course, but also the war between Russia and the Ukraine. And so over the past kind of couple of years, we really haven't caught a fucking break. And this has had this knock-on effect. And recessions are not things that just happen overnight. They are things that, we can hear coming. And of course, like I said, there's speculation as to whether a recession is officially here or not. But if you listen to the news and you keep your eyes and ears open, you will hear, rumblings. And so being aware of that is obviously another really great way to prepare for a possible recession. Now, the other two big causes are kind of related in a little bit of a way is excessive debt and what are called asset bubbles. So excessive debt is, like I mentioned, when the economy is really growing, everyone's living the goddamn best life, they're spending loads of money, but they're also borrowing a lot of money. And eventually that debt can become overwhelming, or they just can't meet their debt requirements. And so people have to declare bankruptcy, they get into real trouble, companies shut down, and this has a massive impact on the economy. And this is actually what happened in 2008 global financial crisis, which I'll definitely do an episode on because, again, a really good learning lesson in history for investing and wealth creation. But what happened essentially, and I am massively oversimplifying here, but people were taking out these cheap mortgages and banks were lending money to people that had extremely poor credit, and these people were buying homes. If you've not seen the movie The Big Short, go and watch it immediately. It's probably one of the best things you can do for your financial education. It's a great movie, and it's all about what happened in the global financial crisis. And to be honest, I think it explains it better than anyone could in a blog or a podcast or YouTube video, because it's a movie and it's very engaging. So go and watch that if you really want to understand what happened. But let's just say, they were meeting with people that had very low income who owned 3 homes, right? Because they were massively leveraging, like over leveraged, which means they were borrowing, the majority of the cost of the home. And then of course, when those payments were due, or when those, their interest rates started to rise and they couldn't meet their payments, then they were defaulting on these mortgages. So this was the cause of the 2008 global financial crisis, oversimplified, of course. But this is a really good example, because when people over borrow and over leverage and then the time comes for them to pay it back, it can cause a lot of problems. And asset bubbles are essentially where assets become overpriced and then the bubble bursts and the values fall. So, for example, the dot-com bubble back in kind of the very late 90s, early 2000s was really when the internet started to come about and people were investing in internet companies, and the stock market went wild. People made a lot of money, but eventually the bubble burst and the value of these companies and the stock market went down. And there was a crash, which did last quite a few years, actually. And this is another example of what can cause a recession, because people start to panic and they sell and they start to worry about money and freak out. And again, so they're spending less. And then it has that knock-on effect. So you can see how it is obviously a very complex subject. I just really want you to understand the basics and grasp the general concept, because that's all you really need to know unless you want to go and learn more. But what happens is these events happen, whether it's being, over leveraged, whether it's something like a stock market crash that causes people to freak out and panic sell. But generally what's happening is people are freaking out and they're spending less money, or companies are going bankrupt. Yeah, so generally people are tightening their purse strings, they're spending less money, they're more worried about money, therefore companies and businesses are suffering, and therefore they're having to let people go and unemployment is rising, and it's just this knock-on effect. No one really knows exactly where it started or can pinpoint exactly what causes it. There's generally a lot of things that kind of snowball together to cause these recessions. And the final cause of a recession is too much inflation or deflation. And of course, at the moment, we have crazy inflation. Again, the highest inflation we have ever seen in our lifetime. If you want to understand more about inflation, I will create a video that you can watch or go in listening to a podcast episode, and inflation just means that the cost of goods and services around us is getting wildly expensive. I mean, I spent $8 on raspberries, frozen raspberries yesterday. I was like a little bit traumatized. So everything's getting more expensive. You will be noticing this at the moment. Fuel, groceries, generally everything. I mean, a coffee now is like $6.50. And when I first moved to Australia, it was $5, or actually maybe $4.50 for a coffee. Possibly $5, and now I'm paying $6.50. And no, I don't get a super fancy coffee. That is like a oat milk flat white generally. Sometimes I get a dirty chai, which if you haven't tried, you have to try. They're amazing. But I'm not getting a super massive fancy coffee. But this is happening. This is inflation, and there is a cost of living crisis at the moment all around the globe. So things are crazy. It's been a crazy few years. In fact, I was just listening recently about a young woman who started trading back in 2018. She's now 20 years old. I think she was, so she must have been, like 16 or 17 when she started trading. And she turned $15,000 US dollars into 1.3 million. And a big part of that has been the stock market and the economy over the last couple of years. Because what happened when we came out of the initial shock of COVID, which if you didn't know, there was actually a recession early 2020 when the COVID-19, malarkey all happened, and it was the shortest recession in US history. In fact, you probably didn't even notice it. It was very short, and it happened very quickly. But then the markets really rebounded and did very, very well. In fact, 2021 was one of the best return years for the S&P 500. It was crazy. I think it was around 26%. So, bit of a crazy market, and what they call a hot market. And so she just had phenomenal returns. But you're guessing that it's, and you're picking up that it's just been insane. So inflation, the Ukraine-Russia war, the COVID-19 pandemic. Is it surprising that, obviously the stock market is also in a bear market, which means it's declining and has declined more than 20% from its most recent high. So there's all this going on. So it's really not surprising that there's talk of a recession. And like I said, America has reported that its economy, it has shrunk for 2 quarters in a row, and I'm pretty sure the UK is going to report the same thing. So we'll see what happens in Australia, but all of these things can lead to a recession. I really hope you enjoyed and got a lot from this video. Like I said, it's my first YouTube video, so please be kind to me. And if you want me to cover any other specific topics, please comment below. If you want to learn more about investing, if you want to learn more about personal finance and growing wealth, then please, consider subscribing and liking this video. It'd be really, really appreciated. So much more content to come. I'm aiming to release 1 video per week at the moment. So that is my goal. But thank you for watching. Really, really means a lot to me. I'm so happy you're here. It really is my passion to educate women about investing and get more women feeling confident with investing. And I do have a completely free Investing Masterclass. I'll link the masterclass in the notes below the video, and feel free to jump into that and, deepen your learning and your understanding. So I will see you on the next video.